Welcome back, Defenders. Today we're going to start with my top story. This is something I've been waiting to see, and I think this is the first utility failure of the season for the Russian people heading into this wintertime. Now I know this doesn't look like much, all you can see is some steam rising, but this was a huge news story last winter. The cascade of utility failures across Russia. Pipes bursting and residents of Moscow and St. Petersburg without running water, without heat, without electricity in the wintertime. Yes, the utility situation in Ukraine is bad, but it's only colder and darker in Moscow and St. Petersburg. So how are the Russian people going to react this winter, going on to year 3 of this war, year 4 of this war? And Putin, the last 20 years, didn't spend the tax revenue to upgrade all the old Soviet-era utility systems. He instead used that money to build up his military and attack his neighbors. This is a developing story I'm going to watch closely, and I think these utility failures will have an impact on the war this winter. Let's check in on the battlefield. Russian counteroffensive in Kursk fails to make gains amid heavy equipment losses. This situation in Kursk is really interesting because Putin is telling his army, under no circumstances can Ukraine still be holding any of this territory before Trump takes office on January 20th. So these casualty numbers have been insane. And the people being sent into battle, these are not experienced soldiers. They have barely any training, and they're just being sent on meat wave assaults to overwhelm Ukrainian defensive positions. And this is a war of attrition, and this is a gift from the Russians, that they're being so careless and desperate to take back this territory in Kursk. For the Ukrainians, you're not going any farther. You don't even want this territory. So when the Russians attack, make them bleed, make them take losses, and then retreat whenever you need to retreat. Fall back to the next defensive position, and just mine everything. As you slowly pull back, with Russia taking horrendous losses, mines down. Just keep putting mines down everywhere, because you're never coming back here. If Ukraine wants to cross the border, they can cross in a different location. As far as the rest of the military map, I don't really do a lot of map updates because to me, it doesn't matter when Russia takes a wheat field or a tree line or a small village. We can get out the ruler. The Russians started here, and we'll be generous and say they've made it all the way to here. 34 kilometers. After 3 years of fighting, the Russians have advanced 34 kilometers in the Donbass region after hundreds of thousands of casualties and 3 years worth of fighting. When you compare this to, for example, World War II, and you think about the dramatic shift in territory over the course of 3 years, doing map updates to me doesn't make sense. This isn't going to determine who's going to win this war. It's going to be about who collapses first, the Russians or the Ukrainians. And a lot rides on what will Donald Trump do on January 20th. I really didn't want to talk about US politics, but we're forced to. These are the top news stories in the world right now. We will have a peaceful transfer of power. Joe Biden welcomed Donald Trump to the White House on Wednesday, shook his hand, took pictures, offered him advice, and yes, spoke to him about Ukraine, the importance and the need for the United States to continue supporting Ukraine. I hope President Trump accepts the message. So now that 100% Trump is taking office, how are the Russians reacting? It's easy to be allies. It's easy to be united when you want to defeat the Democrats, to bring down Joe Biden. But are these people really friends? Are they really allies? And on Kremlin State TV, they're already starting to turn. Here's a clip of Olga, and here's what she has to say. The Associated Press reports that Donald Trump wants to bring Ukraine and Russia to the negotiating table in his first week in office. The exact word used is wants. I mean, for example, I'm not going to tell you what I want. Whether Donald does or doesn't want it, it's not Donald's call, not yet at least. So these are the Russians warning Trump that they will not be dictated to. Putin and the Russians are the ones who want to dictate to the West, dictate to the United States. So when you have two dictators dictating to each other, what could possibly go wrong? Here's another clip. I forget his name, but this guy is Margarita Simonyan's husband, and he's already starting to tease and bully incoming President Trump. You know, after Ginger Donald Trump, he's just referring to Trump as a ginger, after Trump killed an Iranian general and almost started World War III, there's a lot of doubt about his ability to stop wars. According to Trump's team members, he has a long list with the names of people he promised revenge on after his victory. Danya is not a touchy person, just a little vindictive and very vengeful. This list includes, and then he starts listing off Democrats. But yeah, I mean, they're already making fun of him on Kremlin State TV, referring to him as a ginger and Danya. It's going to get weird. But this was an interesting point he brought up. This was the January 3rd of 2020 assassination of General Soleimani. Trump, when he was president, bombed the Baghdad airport to kill this Iranian general. This was pretty reckless. This was unexpected that Trump did this. He bombed the international terminal of the Baghdad airport, killing civilians, just trying to catch their international flights in order to assassinate this Iranian general. This didn't spark World War III, but this did put the Iranians and the Russians on notice, and the Syrians, that Trump is not their friend, potentially. This is the direction we need to go in. We need MAGA and the Russians to start disagreeing with each other. We don't want them to be on the same page on any issue. So here's where we get to Trump's cabinet picks. Trump's new cabinet picks spark hope for Ukraine's supporters. So we've got the good news and the bad news. We've already talked about Michael Waltz as National Security Advisor. This guy is going to be great. We've talked about Senator Marco Rubio for Secretary of State. This guy is going to be great. And now we're going to get to the iffy ones. And Trump stuns officials after naming Fox News host Pete Hegseth as Secretary of Defense. Now your first question might be, who the F is this guy? The defense world reacts to Trump's surprise Pentagon pick. And he's a host of Fox and Friends on the weekends. He's not even on the weekday show. He's a weekend Fox and Friends host. And I don't know how Trump came to this decision. Like, this seems pretty random. But let's go ahead and evaluate what has he said about Russia and Ukraine in the past. And he's actually made some encouraging statements.
One first big question. What's at stake?
What's at stake is repelling an authoritarian who basically is saying, I want the Soviet Union back, I want Ukraine back, I want Kiev back. And then what's at stake is making sure we don't allow it to become an Article 5 larger, broader war than that. So equipping...
So this is Trump's nominee saying that Putin is authoritarian. This is about reconstituting the Russian Empire. We need to support Ukraine so this doesn't trigger a war with NATO. Okay, I don't know who this guy is, but he's not repeating Kremlin propaganda. That's pretty good. Putin's give me my stuff back war. Here's another clip I'm going to play for you of Pete Hegseth talking about the situation with Russia.
And I've always felt like it was, from the beginning, like a couple days in, I'm like, this feels like a Putin's give me my shit back war. It kind of feels like, I feel like you've been pushing pretty hard, and we used to have the former Soviet Union, and we're pretty proud of that. And Ukraine was a part of it, and all these other countries. And I want my shit back. And I think I'm at the right time where I'm powerful enough to do it. And you're not quite on my border yet. and Biden's AWOL, so I'm going for it. And just like I did under my minor incursion under Obama, I got what I could. I got Crimea.
Okay, this guy speaks very casually. He doesn't speak like a politician or an administrator. He's a TV commentator. But he's not repeating Kremlin propaganda. He's not talking about Nazis in Kyiv, biolabs, genocide in the Donbass region, and NATO expansion. So, okay. But this guy is not qualified to be Secretary of Defense. I'm looking at his military history, and he's a 44-year-old major in the National Guard. To put this in comparison, I'm 40 years old, so he's only 4 years older than me. And I left the Air Force as a captain, and he's currently a major, so he's only one rank above me. And the thing about the Department of Defense, the Pentagon, this is the largest organization in the world, in the history of the world. The Department of Defense officially has 2.8 million employees. When you add in contractors and temporary workers, it's closer to 5 million people working for the Department of Defense. What can we compare this to? And the largest private employer in the world is Walmart, with 2.1 million employees. So what are you qualified to do as a major working at the Pentagon? And I'm not joking around here. You're qualified to go get coffee. You're qualified to make copies. As an 04, a major, to be Secretary of Defense, this is a position held for 1-star, 2-star, 3-star retirees, or maybe even retired master sergeants. I know Donald Rumsfeld was enlisted when he was Secretary of Defense. So this is not a nomination that's going to be taken serious. I don't think the Senate is going to confirm him, even though he's saying things that I think is good for Ukraine, bad for Russia. So here's where we get to Trump trying to seize more power. Donald Trump and Elon Musk both came out saying they want the Senate to change their rules to allow for recess appointments at any time. What the heck is a recess appointment? And in the Constitution, when Congress is not in session, this rule was written over 200 years ago when people had to ride horses to get to the Capitol. So in the event of emergency, the president could appoint cabinet members while Congress is in recess. So Trump is saying, allow me to do this anytime ever. Just give me the dictatorial power and suspend your rights as senators. It's the Senate's constitutional role to advise and consent and vote on approving cabinet positions. This is our system of checks and balances, and Trump and Elon Musk want to get rid of it. I could see the Republicans or MAGA making this argument if Democrats controlled the Senate. But Republicans control the Senate. This would mean for a nominee to not be confirmed, 4 Republican senators and every Democrat would have to vote against this nominee. It doesn't speak highly of the candidates that Trump would nominate if he can't even get every member of his own party to vote for this person. So here was the battle that took place. This is how Washington, D.C. politics works. Trump wanted Rick Scott of Florida to become Senate Majority Leader to replace Mitch McConnell, whose health is failing. And Rick Scott did not become Senate Majority Leader. Instead, the United States Senate voted for John Thune. And this is a secret vote. So these 53 Republican senators got in a room and they had a secret ballot. So all of these Republican senators are free to lie to Donald Trump. They can lie to him, saying, yeah, I voted for your guy. I voted for Rick Scott. But then secretly they voted for John Thune, or they voted for John Cornyn. There were 2 rounds of votes. Rick Scott came in a distant third in the first round of voting. So who the heck is John Thune? And this is what he looks like. He's the senator from South Dakota. Is he good or bad for Ukraine? And John Thune has made supportive statements of Ukraine in the past. Let the Ukrainian people win that battle. Republicans picked John Thune to lead the United States Senate. Sure enough, we can look at how did John Thune vote on the last military aid package for Ukraine in Congress, and John Thune right here voted yes. Whereas Trump's first choice, this was Rick Scott, he voted no. So we dodged a bullet. I don't think MAGA controls the United States Senate. This is going to make MAGA upset, and Trump might start targeting some of these senators. But I think for some of these senators, they just don't care. They're probably going to retire in 2, 4, or 6 years. For example, Chuck Grassley of Iowa is 91, so that guy doesn't care anymore. If he wants to vote against Trump's cabinet positions, he will continue voting against Trump's cabinet positions. And this happens all the time. So I know the headlines are scary, this person being nominated, this person being nominated, but that doesn't mean they'll get the position. That doesn't mean they'll be confirmed. Donald Trump, his first time in office, also had a Republican Senate, and lots of his nominees failed. There's a Wikipedia page showing when he nominated them and when they withdrew their nomination. So you've got, for example, Assistant Secretary of Commerce. Oh, this guy, Shanahan, was nominated for Secretary of Defense, and then he had to withdraw. Nobody's ever voted down. They just withdraw their nomination so they're not embarrassed. But Trump is naming people right now, I think, just to make his base happy, but he knows the Senate is never going to confirm them. I don't think the Senate is going to give up their constitutional role for advising and consenting. That would be incredibly stupid of them. Oh yeah, Assistant Secretary of Homeland Security David Clark. This guy was nominated and also withdrew. So the exact same thing is happening that happened 8 years ago. Trump is going to nominate a bunch of crazy people that his base loves, and then even though the Republicans control the Senate, they're just never going to confirm any of these people. So let's get to the bad picks. What to know about Tulsi Gabbard, Trump's pick to be Director of National Intelligence. And this is the worst one, objectively. For the last 3 years, Tulsi Gabbard has been repeating every line of Kremlin propaganda. Here's her tweet from February 23rd of 2022, the day of the invasion. This war and suffering could have easily been avoided if the Biden administration and NATO had simply acknowledged Russia's legitimate security concerns regarding Ukraine's becoming a member of NATO, which would mean US and NATO forces right on Russia's border. I'm so sick of this Kremlin talking points. Ukraine was never going to join NATO. If Hungary or Germany or Slovakia or anyone, Turkey, didn't vote for it, Ukraine was never going to join NATO. So the idea that Putin was justified and needed to invade Ukraine today for threat of Ukraine joining NATO, this is just pure Russian propaganda. It also completely ignores that Sweden and Finland joined NATO and Russia doesn't seem to care. Russia never talks about it. NATO was already on Russia's border in the Baltics. Anybody who repeats this propaganda is working for the Russians. Tulsi Gabbard has also said and done a lot of other stupid things. Tulsi Gabbard says she has no regrets about meeting with Syrian dictator Bashar al-Assad. So, who are our friends according to Tulsi Gabbard? And it's the Chinese, the Syrians, the Russians. Who are our enemies according to Trump's pick for National Intelligence Director? And it's the Japanese. As we remember Japan's aggression in the Pacific, we need to ask ourselves this question. Is the remilitarization of Japan, which is presently underway, truly a good idea? We need to be careful that short-sighted, self-serving leaders do not end up bringing us face-to-face again with a remilitarized Japan. China wrote this tweet. China must be paying this woman to say this stuff, because this is insane. And what's going to happen, she's not going to be confirmed, because then our allies would stop sharing intelligence with us. Canada, the UK, Australia, New Zealand, we call this the Five Eyes. And if this woman has access to the highest levels of intelligence in our government, then other governments will just stop sharing intelligence with us. They should stop sharing with us if people like this are ever confirmed and have real power. The other crazy pick is Matt Gaetz. Matt Gaetz supports Russia. He actually just resigned from Congress because there's going to be an ethics report coming out about him sex trafficking a 17-year-old girl. Matt Gaetz likes to party. He's a party boy. And he's done a lot of drugs. And he's slept with a lot of women. And he really thinks the Russians are cool. What do I say about this guy? Trump likes him because he supports Trump. Trump has no standards. Trump has no qualifications. As long as you support Trump and say you like Trump, Trump will bless you and bring you into his orbit. So Trump nominated Matt Gaetz to be Attorney General, the highest law enforcement official in the country. When this is like the creepiest, sleaziest guy to ever be elected to Congress. So let me play for you my favorite clip about Matt Gaetz real quick. This is conservative Republican Oklahoma Senator Mark Wayne Mullen, and here are his thoughts about Matt Gaetz.
You got to think about this guy. This is a guy that the media didn't give a time of day to after he was accused of sleeping with an underage girl. And there's a reason why no one in the conference came and defended him, because we had all seen the videos he was showing on the House floor that all of us had walked away of the girls that he had slept with. He'd brag about how he would crush ED medicine and chase it with an energy drink so he could go all night. This is obviously before he got married. And so when that accusation came out, no one defended him, and then no one on the media would give him a time of the day. All of a sudden he found fame because he opposed the Speaker of the House back in November. And he's always stayed there, and he was never going to leave until he got this last moment of fame by going after a motion to vacate.
So potentially the next Attorney General of the United States likes to crush ED medicine and mix it with energy drinks so he can go all nights. I mean, this is Trump's America. This is just what I've accepted is going to be the new normal for America the next 4 years. But I don't think Matt Gaetz is going to get confirmed. No, I don't think he's going to be confirmed. Other people, Trump picks Musk and Vivek Ramaswamy to lead new government efficiency body. Yes, Elon Musk and Vivek Ramaswamy, they love the Russians. They repeat Russian propaganda. But if Trump wants to put them in charge of a fake task force, then okay, whatever. If they can genuinely get rid of inefficiency in the government, that's a good thing. I'm not going to oppose that. As long as these guys stay away from foreign policy and national security, okay, whatever. That's fine. This isn't a real job they're getting. So let's get back to the Russians. And Solovyov messed up. On Kremlin State TV, he said something he wasn't supposed to say. Let's go through this clip from Natalka. I met with weapons producers. Let's use weapon producers as a generalized term. Well, it seems to us that if there was a war, they are the ones earning crazy money. At least when we look at German, American, and all the other weapons producers. Their shares are growing and all the rest. We look at ours. They have negative revenue. They are in debt. They have losses. They say, how can we develop? Yes, we fulfill the orders, but we work with negative profitability. Why? Because our country used to determine their prices, and they supplemented their earnings with the sales abroad and the civil market. So Putin the last 3 years has been ordering his defense industry to continue producing at a loss and to take on loans in order to keep operating. Russia's defense sector hasn't operated at a profit probably in the last 2 years. We happily slam shut the civil market for regulatory reasons. For obvious reasons, we don't export abroad much as we can. And they say everything is fine, of course, but maybe we can figure something on. This is really bad news for the Russians if their defense industry has been operating at a loss for years. I don't think you were supposed to say that, Solyov. I think you just admitted something you weren't supposed to. On top of that, the Russian ruble is devaluing. Over the last year, it hit a local low or strength back in August. And since August, the ruble continues to devalue. I was wondering why Russia's central bank continued buying their own currency to stabilize it. And I guess they were doing this prior to the November election. Russia was projecting maximum strength by setting their own reserves on fire by continuing to buy their own currency. The Russian ruble is not widely internationally traded, but there is still some trading going on. And in order for Putin to keep the Russian ruble below 100 to 1 US dollar, this is not good financial decisions, but maybe Russia can't do this anymore finally. I was expecting them to stop doing this after Putin's election, but this number might go crazy. We might see 150, we might see 200, we might see 300 over the next year. Other bad news, Russian Black Sea Fleet missile ship's commander killed in Sevastopol car bombing. I'm guessing some partisans got to him. There is a video of the damage. If you want to see it, I'll link it down below. Mosfilm transfers its T-55 PT-76 tanks from the 1950s to the Russian army amid equipment shortages. The Kremlin filmed this as like a feel-good piece that, look, the state-owned movie studio returned prop tanks from the 1950s to our military. Doesn't this make you feel good about our special military operation? And no, I don't think Russian soldiers being given T-55 tanks is going to boost morale. Putin cuts payments for wounded in war against Ukraine. This is kind of a hot issue amongst veterans in Russia. The current maximum amount of compensation is 3 million rubles, or about $29,000, but the severity of the injured is not considered for its allocation. So if you get your leg blown off or you're crippled or blinded, you're given a one-time payment of 3 million rubles. Putin is saying the Russian government can't afford this anymore, and the compensation will depend on whatever your injury is. But in general, so many wounded soldiers have received payments or families have received death benefits. This is contributing to inflation. Putin saved up this wealth fund of about $600 billion to survive sanctions over the next 20 years. And he's been spending all of this money in the last 3. So poverty rates in Russia are actually at the lowest level since data began being collected in 1995. Putin is just making it rain soldier money, death money, injury money, and it cost him $30 billion just in death benefits over the last year and a half. Jesus. Russian lawmakers passed a bill banning child-free propaganda. Putin needs soldiers, he needs workers, and having less than 6 kids as a Russian woman is no longer an option. More and more, the Russian State Duma is getting behind this plan of just forcing Russian women to breed. So if you promote LGBT propaganda, you're going to jail, you'll be fined. If you promote feminism or women having the right to remain childless, you can go to jail or be fined for that. So what's next? And according to a State Duma member, they want to start targeting Russian women who are obese. I also want to separately note that 30% of women of childbearing age are in one of the stages of obesity, and another 25% are in the stage of pre-obesity. So if you're fat and unattractive, you probably aren't going to have kids. So the Russian government might at some point in the future start fining or punishing women for being overweight, because overweight women have fewer kids. Good job, Russia. Good job. Let's move on to the good news for Ukraine. Ukraine receives a $1.3 billion US grant for humanitarian and social programs. Finland moves to seize shuttered stadium from sanctioned Russian oligarchs. Well done, Finland. 6th German IRIS-T air defense system arrives in Ukraine probably in the next month or so, according to President Zelensky. Thank you so much to the German people. Finland commits 20 million euros to boost Ukraine's school reform and strengthen student welfare amid the war. Once again, thank you so much to the people of Finland. Final video I have for you is in the city of Kherson. The 2-year anniversary of the liberation was a couple days ago. The residents of Kherson can't gather outside because the Russians, they call it human safari. The Russians are using drones to target and kill any civilians they find walking on the streets. So these are residents of the city of Kherson gathered inside a grocery store to sing their national anthem on the 2-year anniversary of their liberation. That's all for this update video. Glory to Ukraine, glory to the heroes. If you found this video informative, give me a thumbs up. Best way to support the channel. Comments and questions, let me know down below. I love hearing from you guys. Till the next video, keep defending the truth, keep defending democracy.